In men's gymnastics, we've got tap swings on different events, but specifically on high bar, which relates to girls on even bar. Understanding where the tap happens if you want to do a flyaway, understanding where the tap happens if you want to do a Tkachev, if you want to do a Ginger, if you want to do whatever it happens to be, a Kovacs. The tap swing is a tap swing. It's just where it's initiated, where it started from, where it finishes, depending on the skill that you want to complete.
Okay. Hey, everyone. Welcome back to the NGA podcast, where we talk all things gymnastics. I am your host, Rebecca Grady, and I am here with my incredible co-hosts,
Dr. Ian Crider,
Mike Newdor,
Rob Axelrod.
All right. So today we are talking about tap swings. They're not very flashy, but absolutely essential for high bar rhythm, timing, and flow. Because if tap swings aren't working, usually the rest of the bar routine can be suffering. So Rob and Ian and Mike today are going to walk us through tap swings. So from foundational basics to why the mechanics matter so much, and some practical drills and stations coaches can use to build consistency with their gymnasts. All right. Who wants to start off and say why we think this is something we need to be talking about?
I mean, I can start. I think there's just a
No, that's perfect. All of us are like, I don't want to go first.
I know. I was like crickets.
No, I have seen so many different types of tap swings. The worst ones are probably in a what I call a pike arch position, where the back is arched and the hips are piked, and they think that is the proper tap swing technique. So, and then those that are just piked and with their back straight, and then I think the ones that we'd like to see, or I'd like to see, is where the body shape is more round and hollow, and the two positions they hit are a hollow position. They're hollow in the back, and they kind of relax as an arch at the bottom, and then there's a hollow again. So just looking for those two positions and trying to not segment the body on the tap swings is going to create the most power. And most of the power of the tap swings comes actually not through the hips, but through the chest. And I see a lot of kids kicking through the hips a lot. They're trying to use their lower back to do the tap swing instead of their upper body. So that's my start, and you guys can take it from there.
Yeah, and from a PT perspective, that's a super important thing, where we want them to tap through their upper back and chest, because then it saves those lower back injuries as well, I think, a lot of times. So that's a really important point to make there, Mike. And then I think one thing that I like to emphasize to my gymnasts is that tapping equals control, and they don't always understand that right away. But even if you're just talking about something like a flyaway, when you don't tap for a flyaway, that's when things are out of control, but they're trying to control it by not tapping. But if you allow them to and teach them to tap, then that's what creates these big floaty flyaways that have lots of control, and they know exactly where they are. But once they try to control it and just kind of do like the glide swing through to the let go, that's when things start to get squirrely on landings.
Yeah. Is that a technical term, floaty flyaway? I just want to know if that's something
Floaty
I can start
flyaway.
using.
Yeah.
I hope
It's
so.
like a bad turd floaty.
A floaty flyaway.
You just ruined it. I was thinking, oh my gosh. All right.
always
Rob, what do
really a
you
big
have to
challenge.
contribute? Just
Always
cut
a big.
Ian off.
It's always a big challenge to get them to tap into their flyaway. They always do that. It's like a shovel.
Okay. Rob, do you want to get us started, since all these awesome videos came from you, and tell us what we're going to be seeing?
So we have a couple of videos here that I did. There's so much more we could give you, but the abbreviated version, obviously on a tap swing here, we're using strap bar, and you'll notice that we have the white plastic over to the right of the athlete there, and she's swinging actually on the bar with gloves. I prefer that a lot better. One of the things that we try to get away from, especially in this video, is that she bends her legs to get her tap swing going. I would prefer them not to do that. I prefer them to just do the right body shapes. But once she gets it going, she's got a really nice tap swing. She's round in the back. She comes up high in the front. She actually does not have giants and does not have cast handstand, but she's got one of the better swings in the gym, like period, just a natural swing. I don't know if I took a video of her doing the actual giants. I think I did.
Yeah, you did.
So, basically what we're looking for here at the bottom is that the entire back wants to be arched through the bottom. And I always say, like, the later the better. For girls gymnastics, obviously the low bar gets in the way. And I didn't do much videoing of anybody straddle tapping, but that's a way to counteract the height difference of the gymnasts and the low bar being in the way. My newest thing lately is try to get the girls to finish the kick on the front side of the bar instead of, old school. We used to put a mat over the low bar, and then we try to kick the mat, or we'd even hang some bells on it so you could hear the bells if you could kick it. But they start to kick a little too early for me, and then they don't get all the way through the bottom and
Hmm.
front side kick. So they get this early tap that happens in the backswing, and then they're done with their kick at the bottom of the bar. So that means they've got to hold that body shape from the bottom of the bar all the way back up around to the top. So I'm trying to get this emphasis on them kicking through the bottom and finishing the kick on the front side. So then that's where Mike was talking
Yep.
about earlier, where you can use your chest and having your chest helping you to go over. It's not just coming from your lower back; it's a whole big arch in the back, and we really try to focus on that. She's got a really I wish she would have done a bunch in a row for me, but she's got a really nice.
Rob, I was going to say, I don't know about women's gymnastics and men's gymnastics, we call that a drag. So you're going to drag and kind of do the arch position a little bit later, but hold it through the bottom and then kick later.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I came from men's gymnastics, I say that every once in a while. I'm like, yeah, I need you to drag your feet through the bottom. Or I'll even talk about that for like a kip on high bar. If you'll drag your feet through the mud before you kip, it'll help you control the kip a little bit better. But yeah, I use that terminology.
Yeah, and then, Ian was talking earlier about the tap swing. Actually, there was a couple of them in a row that she's better at that. We're talking about the tap swing into the flyaway and having some control. And the tap swing does give you the control, and it also gives you the direction of where you want to go in your takeoff.
Yes.
But too many kids have this issue at the bottom where their heads out. So it's a little trick that I do with the kids. I have them hang on the bar, have them put their head back as far as they can, and then I'll lift them from their lower back, and I'll ask them to tell me when they think they're high enough to let go for a flyaway. And they'll all say now, and their feet are down here, because having your head out
Right.
gives you a false sense of actually where your body is. It thinks it's higher than it really is. So in this particular video here, where I'm really focusing on the backswing, so get them in that round shape. And that's on a real bar. We switched out the strap bar. Be careful while you're doing these, especially with the little ones. They may tend to slip off of the back. So, sometimes I grab onto their wrist. In fact, one of the other ones that I have in here that was, excuse me, was doing this drill with me that I videoed. She actually did slip off, but she's tiny enough that I just, held onto her. We actually have a low bar back there that comes in and out also to make it more like, where's the low bar type of thing. She's got a little bit of a
Hmm.
head problem, and you'll see it at the top of her swing. Her head goes in and out on the swing. It's got a little bit of jerkiness to it on the backswing. She's popping her head out. So really trying to focus on keeping the head in all the way in alignment. She's got a little bit of head play there in her swings. But I like this drill particularly because you can control the backswing and get them in that nice round shape, because as Mike was saying earlier, too many of them will come down piked, or they'll tap too early like that one, and then they're arching over the low bar. So you're making your circle
Yeah.
bigger. You're making your circle smaller if you're tapping on the front side of the bar versus tapping just at the bottom to be done with your tapping.
Yeah, I'll say for coaches that may not have a setup that would work for this, or you have a day where you don't have blocks that you can stack up or something like that, you can also just grab their feet and kind of push up on them. And so you can stand behind,
Yeah.
but off
Yeah.
to the side so you don't get kicked in the face. But just grab their feet and push up and have them press down on the bar into that hollow shape, and then let them go to another swing and then pull them up back again. But
Yeah.
standing off the side, so that way you can get more of their body, is certainly easier.
That's a really good point too. Is like, they want to be pushing down on the bar, and I always tell them like that there's pressure on the bar the entire time. There's no such thing as
Hmm.
a free fall, right? You don't want to be at the top of the bar and then all of a sudden you're putting pressure at the bottom. That's where the peels come from. I don't really have too many peel problems. I think we do a good job of prepping them to do a giant swing with the tap swings and
Hmm.
learning the pressure on the bar. This is one of the ones that I like to do also, helping them to keep pressure on the bar the whole time on the downswing. So she goes, I think this
Yeah,
one's
I
front
really liked
handstand.
this one.
So then we hold her pushing on the bar, and then we let her march through the bottom. It's a little bit tough on their lower back. I wouldn't do a ton of them. It also brings into the same point that Mike was making about having your chest and using your chest through this bottom of the swing.
Yep. An alternative that I'll use to this sometimes is I'll put an 8-inch mat up against the uprights of the bar and have them cast handstand and then fall to the mat. And so they
Yeah,
kind of hit the mat. And that's something that we
yeah.
used to do on parallel
That's a good
bars.
one too, and that at least they're coming down through the bottom straighter and more round,
Yep.
and then we're gonna emphasize that arch more through the bottom. This is just a quick little drill too, also teaching them to keep tension on the bar. Put the roller pretty high up on their thighs, and they're just working on the arch and the hollow. She's got a nice round shape, and you
That's
can tell
great,
she's
man. She's
pushing on the bar.
fantastic at that.
Yeah. This is a great little side station. It's not a great little side station if they're not doing it correctly and they're just kind of whooping through it, their feet are apart, but she does a really good job, working her feet, and we try to have one of those on the side for them all the time. Then this one is the same shape, same type of drill, and just it's on the bar. Same thing, they're pushing on the bar the whole time, and this kick is on the front side. So it's a really late tap. She does a good job keeping her head in. She's another one, doesn't have cast handstand, doesn't have a giant, but she's got a nice tap swing. And then this one, I didn't
Yep.
get.
And with that one,
Yeah,
what I was going to say I'll have them start slow sometimes too. And so that way they can really feel and hold it for like 2 seconds each
yeah,
side. So they
yeah.
can really feel exactly what muscles they have to use. And then we go into the fast too. So if you need to
That
break it
same
down for
drill I like
somebody,
to take.
that's what I do.
This is a good picture. You can see here's the strap bar, and actually the low bar's not in, but on the strap bar, I'll have them, or even if it's a regular bar, but I'll put a rubber band over the low bar, and they hook their feet in it, so they can just kind of
Yes.
hold that arch and then get to the round, and that it slows it down, and they can really focus on the shape where they're holding the arch, and then they have to keep to push, and then they're pushing the arch, and then they're back to the round. I really wanted to film. You can see,
Yep.
I think the bands are in that box next to the strap there on the ground. But this is, I think, the same little one that was doing the drill on the floor bar with the roller.
Yeah, she does that great shape there too.
She's a little early on that second one, but she does have some really good shapes, and they're getting ready, these little ones, to do some bigger skills.
Oh,
It's a nice swing.
that's exciting.
Okay.
Well, there we go.
Yeah, she's
Head.
getting there. She's got a little
Yeah, so
bit
the
of bite in
ones
her back.
that the ones that make me nervous, and it's like just like your coach is doing there, for that level 4-ish, group, I am always in between the bars when they're on the high bar. Especially at meets, man, they get adrenaline pumping and they start pumping these swings up and they will peel off at some point in time.
Yeah.
So I do like standing in between the bars for that stuff. But the ones that make me nervous are the ones that like the one that you showed on, I think it was on straps or the real bar where you're catching her, but where she pulled that head back
Yeah.
and
Mhm.
pulling that head back on the backswing
Here's
really
here's
will
that same
almost
kid.
pull them off the bar.
Here's that same kid. She actually does a better job on the bar by herself
Yeah.
without me spotting. So
Yeah.
this one, we go back and watch that one again, because it's real important that you notice that her head's in on this one. She does a really nice job. She had an elbow injury, so she was out for quite some time. So she's kind of making a quick comeback. She's doing a great job. It's a nice angle too. You can see she's got a little bit of leg separation problems. I'll probably turn that into a straddle tap at some point for her. And the whole idea with the tap swing flyaway is we want them to tap into the flyaway, like we're all talking about. It gives them control. She's got nice tap too. Yeah, I watch this back and I think, wow, they look a lot
And
better
I
than I think
will.
they look.
That's
Same
why
thing
taping's
happens on
good.
cast handstands for me. I'll put up like a video replay app on my iPad and I'll be like, man, that cast was low. And then I'll look at the replay. I'm like, oh, actually, that was pretty good. That counts. Okay, we're good.
That one's pretty decent too. That she's fresh to that one too. That's a cast flyaway, so you don't have the opportunity to do the tap swing before, so you have to make sure that you're round, and then there's the tap. She does a nice job
Yeah.
too.
Do you ever, coming from the men's gymnastics side of things, we utilize different tap swings maybe earlier than women's gymnastics does.
Oh yeah.
And so I typically will teach a little bit earlier of a tap for flyaways, and then for giants and normal tap swings and that half turn dismount, I'll teach more of, like, I call it a normal tap swing where they're arching under the bar or a little bit in front of the bar. And so for flyaways, I have them like, all right, as long as you make it past the low bar, you're
Right.
allowed to arch. And what I tell them is that keeps them safe, because now all of a sudden the bar is pulling at this angle
Yes.
versus at this angle for that arch under the bar, and that will make them go away from the bar. Because
Yeah,
so many of our
that
gymnasts are
whole
afraid to
thing
hit the
about,
toes of the bar,
wait till you
Mhm.
rightly
pass
so.
just wait till you pass the bar is like the most important thing. Like you don't have to do anything but round to get past that low bar. And too many of them will pike, and that puts their direction, straight down, not pushing on the bar as they're
Yeah,
swinging down. And then they'll get that little tug at the bottom, gives them the wrong bounce. That can bring them back closer to the bar. People always think that, when they pulled in, it's always just because their head came out or they dropped their shoulder angle, but it's a lot more than that. Half the time,
right.
it's the direction of your tap swing. And Ian, I agree wholeheartedly. You
Yeah,
want to be pushing away from the bar, get past the low bar, then you can tap as soon as you want. You can arch as you want. But it's how long do you hold that arch through the bottom to get what you want on the other side? And that's where my whole new thing for these last
yeah,
year or so about kicking on the front side or finishing the tap on the front side.
yeah,
Yeah, I
Mhm.
think that the understanding and the athlete's understanding of when all of that happens and the timing of it is important. And, in men's gymnastics, we've got tap swings on different events, but specifically on high bar, which relates to the girls on even bar, understanding where the tap happens if you want to do a flyaway, understanding where the tap happens if you want to do a Tkachev, if you want to do a Ginger, if you want to do, whatever it happens to be, a Kovacs. The tap swing is a tap swing. It's just where it's initiated, where it started
Where it
from, where it
starts, where it
finishes,
finishes.
depending on the skill that you want to complete. Yeah.
Mhm.
So understanding just the basic of body positions and the athlete understanding those shapes and when they happen is really important, especially at a young age like these young girls.
So I like that you said the timing with it because a lot of times when kids come to me, we're needing to break down the timing because if there's like a blank spot in their visualization when it comes to it, and it causes them anxiety. So when you guys are teaching them when to pull the tap and when to change it for whether they're doing a release or they're doing giants or whatever, how do you guys teach that to them?
I draw a picture.
Okay,
So,
so you kind of like
uh,
show them at the angles, like where it would be under
Yeah.
in relation to the bar.
so I basically just show them, hey, this is an early tap swing. This is when you would arch. Here's a normal tap swing. Here's when you would arch, and here's a late tap swing, and this is when you would arch.
Okay.
Because it's for me, it's all about the arch. Because whenever you arch, that's what pulls the bar down, and so based on when you arch, then will depend on where the bar is pulled and what direction you're going to go after you pull the bar. Because it's going to go back up, or it's going to be pulled again in the opposite direction, and it's going to pull you with it. And so if you do a flyaway and you tap early, you arch early, then it shoots you off the bar. If you tap normal, it shoots you straight to the handstand. And if you tap a little late, it's going to shoot you past the handstand. And so I say early tap swing is for dismounts, normal tap swings is for giants, and then late tap swings are for a lot of other things. So we do late tap swings for baby giants. We do late tap swings for double A giants to start working the giant more this way. And we do a late tap swing, normal to late for things like Gingers, and Tkachevs are super late, right? So yes, we have all kinds of tap swings for things. And so I say that early is flyaways, normal is giants, and late is like basically everything else. And I stole that from somebody else.
Yeah, I think the
Not that bright.
visualization, Ian, that you use is really good too. Even a stick drawing is basically
Mhm.
what it is, and
Yep.
showing where the tap starts. And then the correction is you started to tap too early. You started to tap too late. Those are the corrections that you make as they're learning, depending on what skill that they're learning at that time. But
And then they know the zone kind of where.
Yeah.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah. But even
Yeah, and they
even
can put it
it,
together too when they're doing giants, and like the giant like hits and doesn't make it over. They miss the handstand and fall back down. I go, well, the reason why that happens is because you did a dismount tap, and so it tried to pull you off the bar, and you stopped early and you fell down. So if you'll hold the hollow longer, arch later, then you'll make it all the way around.
Yeah, those really come in handy, the whole timing of it, especially when they're on the strap bar. I mean, they can do multiple numbers, not hurting their hands, no fear of slipping off, and they can miss a bunch of times, and you can sit there and ask them, the entire time, "Hey, tap later," but it's, I'm trying to redirect, saying just tap later versus hold your arch through the bottom longer, and trying to just use some different corrections with them to try to understand that, to get them to go around the bar.
Yeah, that's good because I think sometimes when you've explained it before, some of the kids get really worried about asking what tap later means or because they don't remember, but then they don't want to get in trouble for asking. So it's good that you use the different corrections, Rob, because that's really important. See if they understand. Okay, and then I have one more question when it comes to tapping, because like I have some kids who, when they do their cast and they're pushing away to do their tap swings, they don't know where their eyes need to be. So I've had some say that they're supposed to have their eyes on the low bar. But I've also had those kids tell me that that scares them because when they look at the low bar, they feel like it's closer than it actually is. Have you guys heard any responses like that from your gymnasts when you're talking to them about that? And where do you tell them to put their eyes?
Yeah,
I'm-
I want their eyes on the low bar because hopefully that tells their brain where the low bar is and then they
Right.
can miss it. For
Yeah.
me, more information is better, not less information. So
Right.
guessing where the low bar isn't, I'm not a big fan of that. But if you can see the low bar, then you can miss the low bar. I think that gymnasts that have trouble with it are ones that maybe learned to do giants and tap swings without looking at the low bar. And then when they finally do look at the low bar, then they get nervous about it
Yeah.
because now it's a reality.
On the men's side, obviously don't have to worry about the low bar. So
Yeah.
I just have them focus on the ground, the mat right below them is their head position. So they're looking right directly below the bar
Okay.
as they're doing their swings.
Yeah.
Okay.
And in overcorrection, I'll have them look at their toes the whole time. So starting from the handstand, bury their head all the way in to kind of do an overcorrection, and then I let them pull their head back out a little bit once they get over that really scary giant. Because
Yeah,
that
I mean,
one, when you pull
obviously,
your head all the way in, if you haven't done that before, it's like, whoop.
yeah, I mean, for us, coaching girls, and we're starting on a single rail, and we don't have a low bar in there, so they don't have that focus of where to look. But I always tell them that they need to at least peek at the low bar. Like, you need to see where it is. If you're afraid of the low bar, then you're only afraid because you don't know where it is. So you have to figure out where that is by looking at it. But you can't stare at it the whole time either, right? So we sometimes put a smiley face at the bottom in between the bars so they can see that, to look down, like Mike said, at the floor. But as you're looking at the floor, you're still peeking at the low bar. You're going to see where the low bar is. So we pass the low bar, and you're still focusing on the downswing of your toes
Yeah.
going down before we open up our hips. So
Yeah, I don't know. The girls are they're learning giants at such a young age now. They can't even touch the low bar with their feet anyway because they're so
Right.
small. So
Right.
That's
so
very
it's,
true.
so I think as they progress and they start to grow and get taller, then that head position and what you're looking at becomes a little more important for them. But
Yeah.
when they're small, they're not worried about hitting their feet because they're too small to hit their feet on the
yeah,
low bar. So
and when they
Yeah, I
get
always
to
like
that
to
point,
try
they
and
get
give
to,
them some importance of that because I'll say that, hey, one day you might actually be tall enough to hit that low bar. So I need you to hollow past it, please.
Yeah, like make
yeah.
sure they're focusing on the shape no matter what,
Yeah.
whether they're close or not.
Close or not,
Yep.
right? And the same goes for, don't be afraid to teach them a straddle tap. Not from the beginning, maybe, so they can
Yeah.
understand the timing. But then the kids don't get that. Like, why is that? So what I'll do is I'll stand them up on the wall, take a piece of chalk and mark their height, and then I just have them open their legs and straddle, and they drop by 3 inches. So the straddle makes you shorter. So
Yeah.
obviously it gives you more time to not hit the low bar. And also there's been some chatter out there about in a straddle tap swing, when your legs come together, they don't just come together, they come together and go forward. And there's that kick on the front side. And I won't use names,
Yeah.
but it was an
So
Olympic
like gives you more
coach.
momentum.
More momentum because your legs are coming together and it gives you more swing. But I said, well, if that's
Okay.
really the case, then how come men don't straddle? They have the fastest giants. But in theory, that does make sense. You don't want to just straddle and bring your legs together. You want to use that momentum to get them to swing through the bottom and finish that kick on the front side. And more often than not, as soon as they get to the point where they're having a little struggle with their giant, or their giant became slower because they grew and they got a little taller and things are off, or they're nipping the low bar, or they want to move the bars out, strongly suggest don't move your bars out for these little kids. One, it's too far for them to jump to the high bar. And two, what are you going to do when it comes time for a release move? You got this little, 4'3" little
Yeah.
girl swinging on the largest bar set there is. And like, oh my gosh, she's really great. She needs to do a release move. Then, okay, now I need to move the bars back in. And now you just changed your whole tap that you spent all this time on. So
Yeah.
there's a reason why the Olympians
Yeah.
are all swinging
Yeah.
on big,
Unless
right?
you're fortunately enough to have yeah, was fortunate enough to have a gymnast like mine who, she started learning giants when she was like 5'7" already. Young, but just is growing super fast. She's supposed to be like 6 foot tall. And so we're just like, well, you have to learn straddle giants. She's like, oh, but I don't like them. I was like, I don't, it doesn't matter. You have to learn straddle giants.
Yeah. I have a couple of them that they straddle giant, and then their legs together for their flyaway. And I'm like, what are you doing? Let's keep the same
Yeah.
straddle tap, straddle
Interesting.
release.
I have one that does opposite. I have one that goes a straight body tap and then straddle for a flyaway. I'm like, what? What are you doing?
Do they even realize that they're doing it when you ask them?
They do.
Yeah.
They do? Okay.
Yeah. Well, so,
Do
and
they
that's
have a
why we
reason for it?
do a lot of tap
Not a
swing
good one.
flyaways. So to get them to really emphasize the tap swing into the flyaway.
Yeah, I think when we talk about, you guys are just talking about all different things on tap swings, but understanding the positions are going to relate to pretty much everything they do on bars. Those good hollow positions, all of that kind of relates as they drop in for endos and stalters and things like that. Having an understanding of those basic tap swing positions are really what bars is all about, especially when they start doing any type of pirouetting or blind changing or anything like that. It all becomes important. Starting them and doing some of those basic drills that Rob, that you had your athletes doing, showing that arch push to hollow position, I think are they're essential. You have to do it at a young age and have them really understand those positions, because if they do, that basic that they've learned is going to help them progress so much faster on bars that if you bypass some of those basic positions.
Okay, so I have one more question that's kind of from my stuff that I've been doing. When you guys are teaching your gymnasts to push on the bar, what if they don't understand it? How do you get that information in their head so that they can feel it or understand it in some way?
On the way down, I think about like pressing the shoulders open. And so if you press
Okay.
the shoulders open, then that helps. I had so my experience was I really didn't like giants on parallel bars. So yeah, men's gymnastics, we do giants on 3 events, maybe 4 if you mess up on pommel horse, you might accidentally do one. I don't know. But we do giants on 3 events. And so for me, I was always really nervous about the swing down for giants on parallel bars because I felt like I didn't have a good grip. I felt like my grip was slipping and I felt like I was going to peel off. And when you peel off on parallel bars, there's always more metal bars further down that you're going to hit. And so
That's
it's
always nice.
it's a little more frightening to peel off on parallel bars. And then finally, a coach is like, well, if you'll just make sure that you're all the way open as far as you can, then gravity won't have anything to jerk at the bottom. And that's why I felt like I was slipping. It was because I was jerking at the bottom. And I see that a lot with my gymnasts on uneven bars as well, as they'll feel like they slip at the bottom of a giant.
Yeah.
And I'll say, well, you've got to make sure that gravity doesn't have anything to pull on. And so if you have any joint angle on the way down, then gravity has something to pull on and you're going to feel like you're slipping. But if you press everything open as far as it can with a hollow body shape, then everything is so much more smooth.
And that's when we talk about like that
Okay, I
freak
like that.
fall, right? They're falling off the bar instead of having pressure on the bar. Another good one is on a low bar, put a block that's just barely far enough away for them to reach their toes, and then just have them hold that shape while they're pushing on the bar and the block. Because now if they don't push on the bar and the block, they'll fall off, or, and they're dropping down the floor. So nothing dangerous, not up high in the air, and that teaches them pressure on the bar. And the other is I line up
Creating that resistance and
that same press through the shoulders and keeping everything open. The other one I do is we do push-up position on the bar with their feet on a raised surface so that they have to hold this shape instead of like this shape, so they have to hold this shape. So they have to push the whole time. Shoulders are shrugged out, pressure's on the bar, feet are up in the air a little bit, higher than maybe 25, 35 degrees above horizontal. And we'll do that for like 30-second holds or
Yeah.
10
The
second
other thing I
holds.
wanted to mention, if you guys, and this is something we haven't talked about, because we just were looking at tap swings, but when the tap swing turns into a giant, teaching the shifting of the wrist,
Yeah.
and that's both directions on the giant, how to shift those wrists, so that you can continue to push on the bar, which is what you guys were talking about. So teaching that how to shift the wrist quickly and get that push back on the bar as you're going over the top is really important to kind of focus on once they get to that position where those tap swings turn into giants.
I feel like I have to teach a wrist shift more often on front giants than I do back giants. I don't know what you guys have, what your experience has been, but for back giants, it seems like they shift pretty automatically. I've had maybe a couple, of course, that I'm like, "Oh, hey, you got to actually shift your wrist. You swung around the bar like this. That doesn't work."
Yeah.
But most often I see that on front giants where they'll come around and keep their wrists under the bar, and I have to teach them how to pop their wrists up. I don't know. What do you find, Rob?
I mean, I still have a little bit of shifting issue with some of the girls, not as much. I agree with you. A lot of times they like to bend their elbows to shift, and that's like a big problem. And that creates that whole no
Yeah.
pressure on the bar. So you have that weightlessness, and then there's that downswing again. So it's like the free fall, and then they're re-grabbing. And one of the ways that I do that with them is I'll have them I don't have anything here to show you, but have them hold a bar with their wrists down and straight and press on the bar and have them lift up, and they can lift it up and lift it up and lift it up. It's really strong. And then I say, okay, shift your wrist, bend your elbows, try to lift it up. And you can hold it with one finger. They can't lift it. They don't have any power to lift their arms straight before they shift up. Yeah. If that makes sense. That
Yeah,
way visual.
on the men's side, the shift becomes important for that exact same reason, Rob, but also because the bar is thinner. They can have trouble with grip lock if they're squeezing on that bar too long and those grips are a little bit too long. So we really
Mhm.
spend a lot of time on shifting the wrist, even on the back giants, because the bar is thinner for the
Yeah.
guys, and they need to understand that.
Yeah, well, I was just saying for the girls, it really is a huge problem with shifting and even pressure on the bar when they're these little tiny ones with little hands, and then they have grips. It's like, they're grabbing a big fat bar. It becomes a little bit hard for them to even understand how to keep pressure on the bar where they can barely get their hand around the bar. Take a good look, if you're new coaches
Yeah.
out there, look closely at your gymnast hands, how small they actually are as compared to, the thickness of the bar.
Yeah. And that's why I don't really give them grips super early, just because a lot of times you see them mess up anyway as soon as they get grips. Like a lot of gyms will do like as soon as you get your kip, you get grips. And then
Yeah.
they spend like the next 2 months trying to relearn their kip with grips on. So I usually don't give grips out right away. I typically wait a little bit of time just to make sure that their bars is solid, their foundation is good. And then when we add grips, it's more of a benefit to them, not a hindrance.
Yeah. We used to do that. It was always that way.
Yeah, I
Oh,
think that's, I think,
you got your kip, you can get your grip. And, we've changed that to like, well, let's just make
Yeah.
it through the level 4 season or whatever. Let's spend a season without grips, and then we'll talk about maybe learning some grip work over the summer. Yeah, I feel
Yeah.
that's a real
yeah, for the
Yep.
guys, it's when they're, basically when they start doing giants, we'll introduce the grips then. But before then, we've already taught them a baby giant how to shift the wrist, forward giant, baby giant, just to support on the bar to teach them to shift their wrists, and then we'll work in. But usually when it's okay, it's time to start learning giants, we'll move on to the grips. Well, my only hope is that Rebecca is out of questions so we can wrap this up, but I'm not sure.
I am, but I was gonna.
Mike's endurance is low
Mike's
on
like-
this. He can't handle it.
It's like, let's roll out.
I can't handle this, man. I don't know how you guys do this.
Okay, last question. So, if coaches could take one
I
big
knew it.
idea
I
away
knew
from
there's
this,
gonna be one more.
question. What is?
She didn't have one until you
The
said that. And then she thought of one more.
Last 3 questions she has. I have one more, and that was 3 questions ago.
I never
That's
said
an old.
that.
That's an old coaching trick, right? You
I
never
know
say
it
one
is.
last question. You say
And she's
one more
trying to-
question.
She's trying to pull that off on us, and I see right through it, Rebecca. But go ahead. What's your last question?
Mike, I missed you. So, if you could give one thing that you really want coaches to focus on when it comes to tap swings amongst all of the content you just gave them, what would that be?
keep pressure on the rail the whole time.
Correct body position.
Yep. For me, it would just make sure they understand the purpose of a tap swing. And if they know why they're doing it, then they're more likely to do it anyway, just like anything we give them.
Awesome. Okay. All right, everyone. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe, leave a review. Let us know if there's any questions that you have specifically about tap swings or connecting them to anything else. And thank you so much for joining us here at the NGA podcast. Until next time, stay happy, healthy, and high performing.